Scaramouche, or as he now calls himself Wander, has finally been released into Genshin Impact. In this guide we're going to break down how to play him and what his best build is. Here's the checklist for everything in today's video. Wander is a 5-star Anemo Catalyst that is categorized as a main DPS, but can also be a driver in a team due to being an Anemo Catalyst for consistent swirls. He ascends with crit rate, and his signature weapon has a crit damage stat, making him easy for building if you manage to grab his weapon. Wander's flashy normal attack, Iban Maigen, is actually extremely important to his gameplay, unlike most Catalyst users. It is his most essential talent to level and must be prioritized. His skill, Hanega, Song of the Wind, allows him to float into the air and increases the damage done by his normal and charge attacks. It also makes him a great use for exploration, since he can fly for a decent amount of time. This talent should be leveled up alongside his normal attack. His burst, Kyulgen 5 Ceremonial Plays, is impressive and probably the favorite part of his kit for many Wanderer mains. However, it is the least important in comparison to his normal attack and skill. You still should level it since it does 5 instances of damage with some amount of AoE. Wanderer's passives are important, so we'll break them down easily. For his Ascension 1 passive, coming into contact with Hydro, Pyro, Electro, and Cryo during his skill will lead to different buffs. Hydro increases the length of his skill, meaning more damage over a long period of time or flying in the air for longer periods. Pyro increases his attack by 30%, Cryo increases his crit rate by 20%, and absorbing Electro gives him energy. At C0, you can have 2 of these buffs at the same time. This encourages you to play Wanderer in multi-element teams, even with the support Farazan in the team. Moving on to his Ascension 4 passive, to keep it short, when you use Wanderer's skill and dash in the air, you have a chance to get an effect that fires off an additional 4 wind arrows. This does not consume stamina after you dash, meaning you get extra damage at no cost if you get the effect. Most Scaramouche fans have already grabbed his C6, but if you're a low spender and still on the fence, all of his Constellations buff his overall DPS, but there are some that take priority over others. His C1 and C2 are great pulls, and his C2 is good enough that you can stop there. C1's attack speed increase means he does damage faster and can do more damage within his skill's time. C2 makes his burst even stronger, but requires focused attention on his skill's stamina. With this Constellation, you want to burst right before his skill runs out and also burst more frequently. At C0, you would burst every other rotation, but with the C2, it is encouraged to burst at the end of every rotation. His C3 isn't bad considering you have C2, so if you reach C2 and have some wishes to spend, then you should probably go for it. His C4 is a tricky one and could potentially end up being pretty much useless. It enables him to wield up to 3 elemental buffs at once. Note that the additional buff is RNG and will only include a buff that has not been triggered. For example, if you gain the Pyro and Cryo buff, the additional buff can either be Hydro or Electro. Depending on the situation, you may not get a buff that really impacts his rotation that much. His C5 is decent since it helps his skill damage, but this shouldn't be something that you should aim to get. Of course, his C6 is good too, giving him more damage and also more skill time, but it can be a bit expensive for the average player. Now is the time for the dilemma striking a lot of low spenders, C1 or risking R1 on the weapon banner. With Wander, if you have Skyward Atlas or Lost Prayers, you can go for a Constellation since these options make building him comfortable enough to not desire his weapon. If you don't have a 5-star weapon, generally you would prefer pulling for his weapon over a C1 since the crit damage, passive, and high base attack push it far above the 4-star options. Of course, the weapon banner can be tricky, so please pull wisely. Overall, you don't necessarily need Constellations for your Wanderer, but he is cheaper than most to get close to max potential, so C2 is a good place to stop. On the note of max potential, let's talk about his best sets, weapons, and teammates. In terms of artifacts, Wanderer's best is his signature set, Desert Pavilion Chronicle, but since he is a normal attack DPS, 4-piece Shimenawa does come in second place. If you have a C2 Wanderer, 4-piece Shimenawa is not worth it, since you won't be able to burst every rotation with ease, and a C2 wants a burst every rotation. However, artifact domains are not kind to everyone, so if you need to go 2-piece 2-piece, here are his best options in order. First is 2-piece 2-piece Anemo damage, then 2-piece 2-piece Anemo and attack percent, then 2-piece 2-piece attack percent. If you're eyeing for 4-piece Verdescent, don't even bother with it. It can be great for buffing, but Wanderer works best as a hyper carry with the team supporting him. Now let's move on to the weapons. Wanderer gets rather expensive for his weapons, however if you manage to grab the standard banner Catalyst, they are good options for Wanderer after his signature weapon. Among the best catalysts is the rare Memory of Dust. You can also use Kagura's, but don't steal it off your Aimiko if you have a high refined Witsith since it can potentially compete with it. And speaking of Witsith, of his 4-star options, Witsith and Solar Pearl are relatively equal, with Solar Pearl giving more consistency and Witsith having a higher damage potential. It depends on which you have higher refinements of. Now you probably weren't expecting this weapon to make the list, but Surprisingly, Dodoco's tail can actually be a good free-to-play option for Wanderer. Just remember to use his charge attacks. Wanderer has been released with a dedicated 4-star support, Faruzan. Her goal is to shred Anemo resistance so that Anemo damage does more, and provide an Anemo damage bonus. Wanderer as a whole prefers multiple element teams due to his passive and C4 aiming towards him swirling different elements. This means that Wanderer has a lot of options for teammates, though you can go for the classic national team if you need an easy to build team. Now here are some examples of teams for Wanderer, with the top 2 being the most expensive but among the best. Faruzan and Bennett are definitely his top 2 teammates. Wanderer is best as a hypercarry, and both of them provide great buffs for him that allow him to be on field as much as possible. If you don't have C6 Faruzan, it can be very hard to get her the energy that she needs without Favonius, so please be mindful of your ER for Wanderer and C5 or below Faruzan. Yunjin, especially at C6, is also a great Wanderer support, providing extra damage to his normal attacks and giving attack speed at C6. Just be sure to keep ER on her, as you won't be running another Geo on the team. Although a Hydra healer like Kokomi provides additional elements for Wanderer, you may prefer a shielder like Layla for the cryo absorption, or maybe someone who can do both like Diona. Figure out whether you need a shielder or a healer to work around your playstyle. Now let's test out one of Wanderer's teams in the Abyss. Alright, and that's all for building Wanderer. Come back later for more and check out our socials to keep up to date on build guides. If you liked today's video, then be sure to give a like and subscribe to show your support. Thank you for watching, and see you later, Sip Squad.